This is Support is Sexy, episode 570, with Ann Davis, founder of Venture with Impact. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you are someone who is ready to, say, take your business or your life, your career, your relationships, anything to that next level, it all starts with your mindset. And I have something for you to help you level up your mindset, a free mindset meditation, help you get grounded, help you get centered, help you have affirming, positive thoughts, help you block out the chatter, help you level up. Download it for free at levelupmindset.coach. That's levelupmindset.coach. A free meditation that you can listen to anywhere, again, to get centered, but also get you in the right state of mind so you can level up. Now, on this episode today, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Ann Davis. Ann is the founder of Venture with Impact, as you heard in the intro. What I love about Ann's company, well, first, I found out about Ann through another remote year attendee, which I'm super excited about. The remote year connections. It's just been amazing. If you haven't heard about remote year, just go back to any episode in the past 6 months. I've been talking about it for a while, traveling to a different country each month with a program called Remote Year. So I found out about Ann through someone in the group, someone who had done Remote Year before. But what I love about Ann's company, Venture with Impact, she not only helps you travel to different countries, but a big part of her business, or the core really of her business, is helping you to have impact in the countries and places that you visit. So they team you up with local organizations there, and part of your presence or part of you being there with this organization or with Venture with Impact is to work with this organization while you're there. So she explains it in much more detail in this episode, but I was really attracted to this idea because it really ties into being of service while you travel, which is so important. Now, another thing that Ann shares in this episode, which was very personal, and thank you, Ann, for sharing this, she talks about the moment that she found out she had brain cancer, how that saved her life, how she learned not to work herself sick, and 4 key things that she did health-wise to change the way that she was living her life once she found out about having cancer. So we talk about being of service, about taking care of other people, and we talk about the importance of taking care of yourself. So without further ado, Ann Davis. So Ann, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I think when I was at university, I went to Tulane in New Orleans. They had just started a social entrepreneurship initiative on my campus. And starting off in my freshman year, I was really interested in just social impact in general, working with nonprofit organizations. And I had the opportunity to co-found a nonprofit that provided swimming lessons for children in New Orleans, which was really important at that time because it was just a couple of years after Hurricane Katrina. Mm. There was over 1,000 deaths in New Orleans due to drowning during Katrina, which is kind of mind-blowing. So I had heard about social entrepreneurship, and I think that's what really got me interested in entrepreneurship, because when I found out that potentially, taking a nonprofit and making it more sustainable through entrepreneurship was possible, I thought, well, this is the answer. Mm-hmm. So that's when I wanted to explore a bit more. So I worked with a few startups when I was in college. One was called Feel Goods, and they make flip-flops out of rubber that comes from Thailand and Vietnam. And
what's it called?
It's called Feel Goods.
Oh, Feel Goods. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other, it was a ed tech startup called Kickboard, and they have tracking for behavior and for online grading. It's an online grading system. So both kind of social entrepreneurships in their own right. But yeah, so that's kind of how I first learned and became interested in entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship.
Now, did you grow up in Louisiana? You said you went to Tulane.
I didn't actually. I grew up in Wisconsin, but at that time when I was, going to college, I just wanted to explore and see something outside of the Midwest.
So now, how would you describe yourself as a young girl growing up in Wisconsin? Were you always sort of drawn to, well, I should say, were you a very compassionate child, or always drawn to situations where you could help people? Or how do you think you were as a child that might play into who you are today?
Yeah. I don't necessarily, it's hard to remember, but I was the youngest child, so I definitely was spoiled.
Same here. I would say I wasn't a brat, but I was definitely spoiled.
I was definitely spoiled, yeah. And that, right, I don't know how kind and caring I was, because I didn't necessarily need to be with younger siblings. That being said, well, a couple of things that I think are funny about my childhood in terms of relating it to kind of the character traits that I need to have now as an entrepreneur is I was definitely not a risk taker. I was kind of a scaredy cat. I remember distinctly one time, multiple times, just having big issues with fear. Once being afraid of heights, climbing to the top of this tower called Lapham Peak in my hometown. And it was like 10 floors up, and it was an outdoor tower. And I was just clinging to the ground because I was so scared just to look out over the side, just terrified. And then also, I grew up on a lake when I was younger in Wisconsin, and both my brothers took sailing lessons, and they became pretty good sailors. And so I wanted to follow suit. But I remember taking, on a small pram, taking sailing lessons when I was 8 or 9, and going 10 or 15 miles an hour. And just, one time I crashed into another boat because I just lost control. I was so scared. So yeah, it's just funny. And I don't feel that I'm as scared of things anymore. I'm definitely more of a risk taker at this point in time. But
it sounds like even then, when you were scared, you still tried things, which is, I feel like, so much of entrepreneurship too, right? Do it afraid kind of thing. Like you were scared of sailing, but you were still out there taking lessons, and then scared of climbing. And then did you climb the 10 floors, you said, and you were clinging to the ground, or you didn't go up the 10 floars?
I did go up.
You did go up, right? Yeah. So you're clinging to the ground, but you still, climbed up there.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but that's very true. And that's very true of myself is I love trying new things. Mm-hmm. And even if it's something that I'm not comfortable with, I'll still try to make myself do it at least once.
Right. So would you say that you always had an entrepreneurial spirit, or did you have other aspirations for what you thought you'd do when you got older?
I actually really wanted to be, I mentioned that I grew up on a lake, and I loved the water. I loved going, my family used to go to drive the 18 hours to Gulf Shores, Alabama, down south every summer or every spring break. And I loved the ocean. So I always wanted to be a marine biologist. But I think that also had to do with just my curiosity. I was also always pretty curious as a child, and that's continued. People today have even called me obnoxiously curious. So just my curiosity about the ocean and learning about marine life, I think attracted me to marine biology. But obviously that's not where I ended up at all.
So you became interested in sort of social impact projects when you were in college?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So then what inspired you to go on to create Venture with Impact, which is the company that you have now?
Yeah. So let's see. So actually, personally, I guess, after college, I knew that I wanted to have a career in social impact, but I also, wanted to be financially sustainable right out of college. Mm-hmm. So I have the opportunity to join Teach for America, and I taught elementary education for a few years. Actually, this is a big part of my personal story. In my first year of teaching, I was on a run with some friends in New Orleans, where I was living at the time, and I had a grand mal seizure and was rushed to the hospital and found out shortly after that I had been diagnosed with brain cancer. Yeah, so that was, and that was kind of a point in which, right out of college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I was working so hard and I was very stressed and I had no work-life balance. Basically, I was working, 15 hours a day oftentimes. And that's pretty common, I think, for first-year teachers, whether they're in Teach for America or they're just a first-year teacher in general. So it was a huge, it was a life-changing moment. And
you said you had a seizure while you were out on a run, and that's what caused you to go to the hospital, and that's when they found out?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Was it caused? Did they think it was caused by the stress? And like you said, it sounds like you were really going for a long time without a break.
I think so. The more that they learn about cancer, the more they find that, people have, almost everyone at some point in their life, beginning at the age of 15, actually that early, develops cancer cells in their body. Mm-hmm. Now, whether those cancer cells become an issue, it depends on how, large or how quickly they multiply. So I believe in some sense that due to the stress that I personally undertook, and a lot of it was, something that I did to myself. I really had these expectations of what I should be as a teacher in my first year. And of course, just teaching in general can be stressful. And I was working in a low income school, but was something that I put on myself. And as a result, I probably had, some growth in my brain that started growing more and more quickly because I wasn't taking good care of myself. And it's kind of a reminder now, just even 5 years later, I've been in remission for over 5 years.
Oh, good.
Very thankful for. And as time goes by, there's less and less chance of recurrence. But even today, it's a reminder that, I need to maintain a work-life balance. And
what does that look like for you, a work, especially since you have your own company now?
Yeah. It means, not like shutting down my computer after a certain amount of time of working every day. Of course, I still have many 12 to 15-hour days, but I also think I really don't get stressed about many things as much as I used to, whether they're work-related or family and friend-related. It's just looking at the bigger picture. It's just not worth it. And then I, of course, have my personal practices. So I've always been a fairly healthy eater, but I don't eat meat, and I exercise almost every day, even just, moderate exercise, practice yoga, breathing techniques, some meditation, although I'm really bad at that. All of those, I think there's 4 main things that are very important when it comes to, and they say that 1 in 2 people now are going to be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, which is
wow.
incredible. And so I've heard of 4 different things that are very important in order for preventative care, which I believe should be focused on much more. Not just treating after the diagnosis, but those 4 things include stress management, moderate exercise, a vegetable or plant-based diet, and then just trying to cut toxins as much as possible. So toxins, however you might think of them, whether it's pollutants or cleaning products or the makeup, the toxins, and being aware of the toxins in the makeup that you use. Those are just some examples.
Right. Thank you for sharing those. And I'm glad you mentioned with the toxins. Sometimes people think, oh, I'll just do a detox, not to be flip, but people just think I should say of what they're digesting. But it also includes, as you said, products in your household, things that we put on our skin, which is our largest organ, right? Some of those things, I think a lot of us, I know I didn't for a long time, it didn't even occur to me that those are some of the things to think about as well when you talk about being healthy and, careful about what kind of things you quote unquote take in.
Yeah. And when you mentioned detox, I mean, a detox isn't, you want to maintain these 4 practices in the long term.
Ongoing, right.
Yes, exactly. Not just, temporarily become a vegetarian for a week and only eat vegetables. Like, that's just not going to work.
Right. So how did the diagnosis, I would imagine it was scary, but how do you feel like it changed? You've given us sort of a sense of how it's changed your life long term now that you're a little bit beyond it, a few years, I should say. But how do you feel like in that moment it changed the way you thought about your life or what you wanted to do?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So to get back to that, I guess, so when I was teaching, I after I went through treatment, I did go back and continue to teach because I knew that was something I hadn't done it for a long time. And I wanted to, continue to develop and try, complete my commitment. So I taught for 4 years but I knew I was always interested in international development as well as social entrepreneurship, I mentioned before. So in July of 2016, I decided to quit my job and just move to Peru somewhat on a whim and started working with some nonprofit organizations there. That's when I came up with the idea for Venture with Impact. So there, I just decided to go for it and started recruiting professionals from the United States to participate in our pilot program in January and February of 2017 in Peru.
Was it something that you saw going on or not going on in Peru that made you decide, I'm going to create this business that is all about, well, you'll tell us more what it's all about, but was there something going on that you saw missing there?
Yeah. So in Peru and other, so I've worked with international nonprofit organizations in Venezuela and Honduras as well. And just noticing that there's a huge lack of skills-based volunteers or, resources for consultants, for people, for staff to be trained and just skills-based volunteers. Nonprofits have so many needs, and of course, donations and financial resources are just one of those needs. But I believe, those are important, but I also believe that in order to assist the organization in becoming self-sustainable, training them in business practices, so accounting, marketing, finance, things, and things of that nature, helping them to come up with, also strategies to become more sustainable. That's so important. So realizing that from my time abroad, and then also speaking with friends and previous colleagues and family that, they wanted to make more of a social impact in their current positions. And they also wanted to be able to travel more, but they just couldn't because as Americans, we only get 3 weeks of vacation each year. It's not much.
Sometimes just 2 for some people.
Yes, exactly. So there was a huge need on both ends with nonprofits as well with professionals, and especially millennial professionals that had more of a desire to go abroad, make more of a social impact. So that's kind of where the idea of Venture with Impact arose. In what we do is, bring professionals to cities abroad, and in groups. They come individually, and then set them up with everything they need to work remotely for their job back home for 1 month. And that also means, helping them with accommodation and workspace and 24/7 support and activities and events and things of that nature. And then also matching them with a local nonprofit or social enterprise to work on a skills-based volunteer project in which they use their professional skills and interests.
And does each person in the group work with, I would imagine you paired them with an organization that matches their skills. So it's not like you, as a group, you guys are going and working on a specific project. Is it an individualized thing, or?
It is very individualized and very customized. So we have a variety of organizations in each of our locations, and we get a good understanding of their needs from month to month. And then we interview each of our participants on their skills, interests, and remote work schedule. And then we match them with a project.
Mm-hmm. And how it's for a month, do you find that that is enough time for people to really become engaged with whatever the organization is that they're working within?
Yeah, that's a good question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that comes up often because a month is a short period of time for any sort of volunteer project or consulting project. And that's really what it is. It is a consulting project. So because they're honing in on a specific need within the organization and they're focusing on training consulting. So that means, working with the staff or the long-term volunteers on, something. For example, we've had, the other month we had a guy with a background in front-end development and marketing. He worked with the staff of a local nonprofit to create a 12-month marketing plan and then train them during that time how to implement that plan over the year. And that's something that he committed, about 5 hours a week to. So now that they have a good understanding of what those marketing goals are and how, what they need to do in terms of social media and other, marketing strategy. And we also had a woman the other month with a background in accounting, and she came up with metrics for tracking the social impact of the organization she was working with so that they can share that information with stakeholders, use it for applying for grants, things like that.
So when people arrive, if I sign up for a Venture with Impact, or if I'm accepted, right, you have to apply for Venture with Impact, then we have the conversation. So I'll know before I go, or have a sense before I go, what I'll contribute to the organization, or do people more so find out when they arrive?
Yeah, so the way it works is our people sign up from 2 to 4 months in advance of the program month, and then as soon as each individual is signed up, or we call them ventures, then we start to figure out their project match. And that takes time between us and speaking with the local partner organizations to figure out where what their skills, what skills of theirs fit the needs best of which organization and what project they'll work on. So generally we know about a month ahead of time what the specific project and partner organization is, and then we connect the venture and the organization via email, and they set up a time to Skype or to connect to talk more about the project. And then when in country, they also, of course, meet in person in the first couple of days of the program.
And then when in order to participate, does the participant, or do I pay Venture with Impact? And then does the organization that I work with pay me? Because you mentioned consulting, or is it that's part of the experience, the volunteer work with the organization, and then being a part of Venture with Impact, where you set up accommodations, workspace, and all that stuff?
Yeah. So the the ventures, the participants just pay us. And, that money goes towards everything from their accommodation, the workspace, the project batch. And then we also have like lots of other things going on. So cultural events and activities, weekly meetups, a day trip, language crash course, things like that. And then the work that they do with their partner organization, which ranges from 3 to 15 hours a week, is completely pro bono, because these organizations we work with, they really lack resources. So it's free for them.
So it's pro bono consulting. Got it. Excellent. So it's you get as a participant, for people just to get a clear sense, you get obviously the travel part of it, but then you also get local or cultural events, whatever country you're visiting in. Also day events or day trips, or a day trip during the month. I would imagine you probably do one or maybe two. So a month is a short time. Then you get to volunteer with the organization for, would you say 5 to 15 hours a week?
Yeah, 3 to 15 hours a week. It just depends.
Okay. And then, but you can also, is this a part of it too? Or you should also be able to work remotely if you have another job or career or something. So you're balancing that with your own work as well, right? Or do people just sort of do this completely?
Yeah, no, it really ranges. So of course, initially the reason we started Venture with Impact was just seeing professionals that didn't have the ability to travel abroad. So by allowing them the opportunity to work remotely while they're living abroad and working with a local organization, it's a win-win. So we have people that are working full-time, part-time, and then also some people that are between jobs or on sabbatical. So it's quite a range of different professionals. And yeah, just to mention what in terms of the pro bono consulting, like we were speaking about before, it is something that is, of course, beneficial for the local organization, but also we see that it's a two-way street. So it's really also beneficial for each professional in terms of development and, forming relationships with locals in the city where they're living.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier, you said that when you had the idea, you started reaching out to professionals who might be interested. But would you say that was sort of the first step in setting up the company, finding the professionals first, and then the organizations? Or what was the process like for getting that first group maybe to go on the Venture with Impact trip?
Yeah, it's a mixture. I mean, when you're a startup, there's nothing that comes first and second. It's just everything at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. So, forming relationships with nonprofits and marketing and reaching out to professionals, networking, all of those things, happening kind of all at once.
Did you find that people understood the idea? This was how many years ago? 2 years ago you started it? 2016.
Yeah. I think that, that's a good point, because remote work programs, co-workations, it's still a new concept, right?
Right. Only within the past, 5 years, at least that I've heard about it.
Yes. Yeah. I think that people within the millennial generation pick up on it pretty quickly, but explaining it to, the baby boomer generation, for them, the concept's a little bit more difficult to understand oftentimes, but, after an explanation, it makes more sense.
So speaking about that, it's a great segue. How do you for Venture with Impact, help people who say, I'm not an entrepreneur or freelancer or something like that, and I work for a company, but I really want to participate? Do you sort of help the person who wants to be a part of the programs talk to their company or their employer about why this could be a good thing for them? Or do you guys not get involved in that?
Yeah. So actually the majority, we've had about 90 professionals thus far in our programs, and the majority of them work for companies. And we've spoken with their employers before, and oftentimes, and we provide also resources for how to speak to your employer about participating in a Venture with Impact program, or, working remotely in general. And we've had many people that have, have never worked remotely before for, a longer period of time, more than a day. But they were able to convince their employer to allow them to participate. And I think that's really said something. I mean, there's a huge issue, especially now, in the past 10 years with employee retention in companies. As professionals, they want more work flexibility. And you can see that this generation especially is hopping around to jobs every 2 to 3 years, so much more often than in the past. That it just makes sense that these companies are allowing their employees or our participants to work remotely for a month.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, Anne. I'll give you a few minutes to think about, a couple minutes, not a few, it'll be radio silence, right? But the top 3 reasons or top 3 ways maybe or tips that you can give for people who want to do something like this, but they are working a full-time job and they're not necessarily sure how to have this conversation. Like you said, you have some resources. So maybe either 3 tips of something that you guys advise people or 3 things that you know to have worked during those conversations. And while you're thinking, I ask this because I'm doing remote year, as you know. I met you through someone went through remote year, Jamie. But a lot of my friends have full-time jobs back home. And then when they talk about traveling, or, oh, I wish I was there with you, but I have to work. Or, oh, I can never do that because of my job. Or even other people that I don't know personally say something similar of, oh, but my job, oh, but I have to work. And I know of people in remote year with me right now who have full-time jobs, who are making it work. And I haven't asked them, maybe I should, about what kind of conversations they've had, maybe a little bit, but I've never been able to give the response to people who sort of stop themselves from even considering something like this, or with you even doing for a month with Venture with Impact, doing something like that because they automatically think, oh, but my job, oh, but I have to work. But maybe there's some tips you could share for something that they can consider having a conversation with their employer about if they really want to do something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first having a plan is really important. So thinking about why a program like Venture with Impact would benefit their employer, their company specifically. So bringing in information about what is the company's current benefits plan, what is the company's core, like vision, and I guess like the core characteristics. Every company has those core
core values.
Core values. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing in their core values, whether that means if it's related to professional development, related, innovation, for example, how does Venture with Impact relate to that? If community, how does Venture with Impact relate to that? So that's important. And how would this benefit the company long term? Well, as an employee, I'm going to be more refreshed. I'm going to come back with new ideas. I'm going to want to work for you longer because you have given me this amazing opportunity. We also have case studies, of course, of ventures that have done the program, worked full time, come back and worked for longer periods of time. So that can always be helpful.
So like providing examples of how this has worked for other employees.
Yes, exactly. And then, if there's still doubts, saying, why don't we just try this out for a day or a week? Can I work remotely for a week, see how my productivity is, and then go from there. But, it's really important, I think, to come to a meeting prepared with a plan and with, not just how this is good for you, but how it's good for the company. And that's always, of course, more convincing.
Excellent. Great tips. I'm going to use those. This is what you need to do, according to Anne. Perfect. So what would you say is the ultimate vision for your company, Venture with Impact?
Yeah. So this is a great segue because actually, so the majority of our participants have come individually convincing their employers, but now we're beginning to see interest from companies. And we're beginning to work with companies that want to offer our programs as a benefit or a perk. And that's either them, paying for the trip, or they're sharing the opportunity with their employers, and their employers self-fund. So I think our big vision is related to corporate social responsibility, because of course, we're doing great things right now with the number of professionals that we've had in our programs. But I think to make a really big impact, it has to come from, the employers of these professionals to say, we want the culture of our company to be that of one in which all of our employers are giving back, in whether it's in the United States or internationally, to these projects and these organizations and areas that they care about.
Right. And I love that. That's so smart too, to do it. So you sort of are able to enter or support from both sides. So the professional who wants to participate, but then, as you said, getting more of the companies involved or thinking about this as an option is a really powerful way to the end result, is making sure, obviously, that people participate, have a great experience, but really giving back to these organizations. It sounds like it puts even more possibility and maybe even structure in place to be able to do that. If a company decides, okay, this is a part of our social responsibility program, or like you said, our benefit for employees, et cetera, it feels like a little bit more of a long-term support potentially.
Yeah. And again, it's a win-win, because their employees are happier. They're developing professionally. They're, developing leadership skills, and then they're also making a social impact in, potentially also countries and communities where they want to expand their business.
Right. So what would you say to date has been the most challenging part of your business?
I think for a lot of startups, most startups, especially because we've been B2C focused, is marketing and just constantly, bringing in new clients and new professionals that want to participate in our programs. But we have, so we've been developing a marketing plan that's for the long term, and then also networking and really just trying to convey the message of how valuable an experience like this can be in both our ventures' lives as well as the lives of the people that they work with.
Do you have any couples participating in, or people who do it in pairs participating in the event? I just was thinking about the kind of people who might participate in, say, if it's people who are teachers normally and they get summers off, but they want to do something together, or, however, whatever that looks like. Do you have any couples, or do you allow couples to do it, or is it mostly individuals?
Yeah, we have all sorts of people. So we've had individuals, couples, families. So we've had children of all ages with their children participate. Mm-hmm.
Oh, great! How young can the children be?
Well, we've had children as young as 6 months.
What?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have a 7-month-old coming next month to Lisbon, and we've had other infants in the past, and then we've had children up to teenagers.
Okay. And it's so crazy. That's another thing that people have said to me too, why they may not do something like a remote year, because they have children and they'd either want to bring their children, or they'd have to figure out what to do, or do the accommodations, support having children. So you will find accommodations, obviously, that are suitable for whatever the family looks like.
Yeah, all couples and families receive private accommodation, which is nice. And then we have connections with local babysitters, daycares, rental for all sorts of, equipment for children, whether it's car seats or strollers, high chairs.
Yeah, that's because you're a woman. You're thinking this way. It's so wonderful. I love it. Not even about children or anything, but it's just, I don't know, nothing against men. I always say we have a few good men who listen to the podcast, but it's just such a smart way to think about, because so many, I know women, I'll speak personally, that I know personally who always talk about, oh, if only I didn't have, not that they don't want their children, but when they're thinking about doing something like a remote year or anything like this, they think, well, what am I going to do with my children? These aren't even people with babies. Just even knowing that, then it sounds like such a great way to even teach your young children about giving back and impact. What an experience that could potentially be. Have you had people say that as well?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just
Hmm.
from my background in education, I'm all about experiential learning.
Right.
I think it's incredibly valuable.
Oh, I might be sending some folks your way. I have some friends who are married couple, have young children under 8, but definitely over 6 months.
Yeah.
Interesting. Fantastic. I love it. Oh, so glad we talked about that. So for everyone listening, a few different people listening, one, if you have, there is a way to experience something like this. You have, whether a partner or children or just by yourself. Also, I have listeners who are entrepreneurs, or they may be in the corporate space and thinking about it. But a lot of you too are either in HR or management or things like that. If this is an organization or a company that you're interested in working with to help the company that you're with now, your own company or others, we're going to find out how to get in touch with Anne. So make sure you listen out for that. But I just feel like you could potentially touch so many people who are listening. So I'm so glad you shared your story with us.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
Of course. Now, what would you say that before you go, what would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Yeah. I think it's really taught me personally that I enjoy leading and managing and working with people, which I knew before. But as a teacher working in education, oftentimes you're alone in the classroom and of course you're working with your students. But it's a bit different, and I really enjoy working with my team. And of course, they are the reason that we have come thus far. But then, as a woman, I think I've definitely noticed from, a funny noticing from going from education to business is being around women all the time, lots of women. And now I'm a solo woman here. Just the other week here in Lisbon, we participated in a sort of mini accelerator program for businesses. And I was the only female founder there.
Was that an interesting change? Out of 20 businesses?
Yes, mostly from Europe and the United States, these businesses were from.
So how do you own that room when you're in that circumstance?
I mean,
or own your space even.
Yeah, I'm equal to, I try not to think about it as, obviously I noticed that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's the only one, but I try not to think about it that way because I'm an equal to everyone else. And to all these male founders.
Have you run into any challenges that you can think of, even establishing relationships with some of the organizations in these other countries where it may be more patriarchal than, well, America's pretty patriarchal too, but it may be even more so in their cultures? Or has it been you just owning your power and saying this is what you're doing and the right organizations will connect with you?
No, yeah, I don't think that's been an issue at all. I mean, being a woman in a more male-dominated industry, it just makes me more proud. Mm-hmm. It's made me more aware of women's equality, especially at this time with this recent movement as well.
Right. Now, do you have investors in the company, or are you bootstrapping it right now and seeing, what your plan will be a few years from now?
Yeah, we are definitely bootstrapping. And we want to make it, we don't want to be controlled by or too much influenced by investors. So it's been good in that sense, but we're bootstrapping it.
And just so people have a sense, I forgot to ask earlier, how much is it to participate once you're accepted into the program for, say, an individual?
Yeah. So because we have 4 program locations now, for our program in Colombia, Thailand, and Mexico, it's $2,100 for the month. And then for our program in Portugal, it's $2,500. But we also have a really good New Year's discount that's 15% off all of our 2019 programs for all, for applications and signups completed by December 31st. And then generally we have a 10% discount for people who sign up at least 4 months in advance.
Okay, excellent. Now, before you go, Anne, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Okay, so oh my gosh. Well, that's really difficult because there's lots and lots of people, and I
Mm-hmm.
think most people would say that. But I'm really close with my mother, with my mom, and she's always been very inspiring to me. She was when I was growing up, she was a school principal, so I always felt like that. I was living with a celebrity because everybody in town knew who she was. But I definitely look up to her. And if I could say anything to her, it would just be, you inspire me.
Excellent. Now tell everyone how they can find out more about Venture with Impact, about you, website, any social media you want to tell us about, and where we can find out about this discount for 15% off.
Yeah. So just our website is venturewithimpact.org. And you can find out about the program application there. Also, you can email us at info@venturewithimpact.org. We are on Instagram, Venture with Impact, and Facebook, and Twitter. Twitter is venture_impact. And then also, for people that sign up and who are listening to the podcast, they can get $100 off. Maybe we can come up with a discount code.
Oh, yeah. Can we do a discount code of support is sexy altogether?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Yeah. So on our website, we have our application, and there's like a little place in the application for putting in a discount. So if you put in support is sexy, then it's $100 off program sign up.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Anne, for sharing your story and your story about your business, but then also your personal story as well. I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing. That's why I was so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you too, Elise, for the opportunity. And this was fun.
Absolutely. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Parting piece of advice. So I'll leave with my favorite quote, which I actually haven't said in a long time, but it was in my yearbook quote, and it's from Abe Lincoln. In the end, it's not the years in your life that count, but the life in those years.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Anne. To find out more about her, to find out more about Venture with Impact, and to get $100 off if you book with Venture with Impact after hearing about them on the Support is Sexy podcast, just go to supportissexy.com. Go to that search box and just type in Anne, ANN. Her show notes page will pop up with links, the resources, and all the ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexy.com and just search Anne. Be sure to look for Ann Davis because we've had other Anns on our show as well. So supportissexy.com, search Ann Davis. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. As I always say, it would not be the same without you. And here we are 2 years later into the podcast, and I still mean it the same way I did from day one. It would not be the same. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you haven't already, I would love if you leave a review for the Support is Sexy podcast. Let me know what you think. Leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening. Your feedback means everything. All right, so now, until we chat again next time, always remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.